Hello YouTube, it's Randall again from Dreamtime Garage, and we're back on the generator project today. Trying to figure out what happened to this Briggs and why it doesn't want to turn over more than a full revolution. Alright, the last time we looked at it, we checked for valve movement and all that. It was locked up solid. We pulled the recoil housing off and got some stuff out from behind here that just broke loose on its own and behind the flywheel. And it turns over one revolution now. Remember, it's hitting something solid. And it almost feels like something in the crank, but hoping it's just something stuck somewhere. But I've already had this flywheel off and cleaned this out behind here, but I wanted to kind of run through it with you real quick before we move on. Basically just need to unscrew this. This is what actually holds the flywheel on. Once that comes off, we got a washer. Now usually you can just stick a screwdriver in behind here and put a little bit of pressure on it and kind of tap with a rubber mallet or something here on the shaft, or just kind of tap around, make sure you don't hit the aluminum fin, stay on the steel. You don't got to hit this very hard, you're just going to kind of bounce off of it, and usually it'll pop loose off of there. This one wouldn't do that. We ended up having to break out the slide hammer here, and that popped it off of there. Made life a little easier. Anyhow, I already got that all cleaned up behind there. This is a magnetron ignition, so there is no points behind there, but there was a bunch of mud dauber nest and just crud buildup back in there, so it needed to be cleaned out. There it is. So that's about all we got in there. If this did have points, your condenser would be mounted here. So it's actually got the slot and the screw hole, and then this hole over here would be where your points would be sitting. But then installation is reverse of removal. You got this keyway right up here. That's the most important part. And you got this, I call it a shear pin. Goes in there. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but one end of it, it's kind of angled there on the corners. Focus in on that. The other end of it's a lot squarer. So we want to put the more rounded end facing outward. And that'll just make it a little bit easier for this flywheel to slide on. And then right in the center there on top, you see the keyway. We got to line that up with that swell pin. Make sure it's pressed down all the way. Okay, and then once we get that all slid on into place, just a little tap. Kind of seat that in. And you got your washer. And then screw your main hub there back on. And when I pulled this off, usually I lock a screwdriver in between the steel fins and down to the frame, or just somewhere where you can get it locked into place. Once you spin a little, it'll tighten up. Big pair of pliers around this, just regular left-handed threads. Usually cracks right loose pretty easy. And then the same going back on, just hold that with a screwdriver and just snug it up. It's not got to be extremely tight. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do, I already cleaned up the threads on the motor mount bolt there. Got the nut off of the two on the front. The generator mounts are broke, so this thing is ready to lift up out of there. So I'm going to get that pulled out next and set up on top where we can actually access it, and then we'll go from there. Alright, we're back. Got it set up out of there. Couldn't quite do that with one hand, but anyhow, here we are. Got her set up here. And that even wiped some of the dust off. Look at the paint on that thing. Could be a decent motor. we'll have to find out when we get in there. Well, a couple things we need to do now. We need to pull that generator head apart for one thing, because without a doubt it's going to need to be all cleaned up and serviced. And I'd kind of like to pull the head off of this thing too. Either one of those could be an identifier as to what's going on with it, so they both need to get done. So let's start with the head. I think I'll get all these covers pulled off of here, and we can get access down to it, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I'll set you down here for a minute and get those bolts cracked loose. Okay, so got all those bolts pulled up out of there, and you're gonna go with me as we open this up and see what we got underneath of there. I have not had these all pulled out yet. And the same bolts here that hold this metal cover on, these are also the head bolts, so kind of knocking them both out at once here. Thought I had them on there. Okay, and then we got one more down here on the side. Bracket for the oil pressure light there. Okay. Yeah. And I did have one more. I had that top bolt there that holds the generator case together. I had to pull the nut off because this bottom of this bracket here kind of sits down on there, so I had to pull that loose. Okay, and next, let's see about, we got a couple more bolts here and we'll get that head popped off. Got those 3 bolts loose. Get those up out of there. And we should be ready to pull this head loose here. Alright, you ready to see what's under there? Yeah, right loose. Decent amount of carbon, but not ridiculous. See, piston actually is not too bad. I don't know if you can see it, but alright. Get this head cleaned up. Well, what do you say we give her a little spin now we got the head off and see if we can make more than a revolution. Oh yeah, that's what we're looking for. Spins over nice and smooth. See if I can get you down into that cylinder wall. It actually looks not too bad. It's got some light marks in there, but for an engine that was stuck solid, it's not bad. It's a little bit of light wear, but can't even feel it. Still got some hash marks in there. I don't know if you can see it on camera. See how our valves are looking. Good exhaust. Intake should be coming out. There it comes. Okay. Our valves are opening and closing. The cylinder looks good. So what caused this thing to be locked up with the head on? Oh, look at all that. I don't know if you can, something has actually knocked the carbon off and pitted the metal like crazy. Let's come back over here. We got some chunks of debris, but the top of that valve, see if I can focus you in. Whatever was in there was bouncing on the top of that valve, that's for sure. And we've got a lot of loose stuff here, but some hard chunks of carbon. What is that? Oh my. I can zoom you in. Look at that, folks. That is a flathead screw. It's kind of hard to recognize. So it's been chewed up a little bit. So that screw was stuck somewhere over here. Somewhere over here, maybe in the valve. So, well, that's good news. That little bitty flathead screw apparently was dropped in through the spark plug hole at some point in time. And for the last 10 plus, maybe 15 years, has been the death of this generator. So next I'll get this all cleaned up for you and get you a shot of that before we go back together, and we'll see how the compression looks and fire and go from there. Got everything all cleaned up now. Just want to kind of zoom in and show you guys the damages. You can see here on the piston where the screw was stuck in its final spot at. Kind of pitted the piston there. The other slide there's a factory mark, but that's where it chunked in there. And then over here right outside of the valve seat, got another good pit there, and a couple small ones inside there. Chewed up that valve just a little bit on top there. On top there, but not too bad. The seat looks good. Actually put a little oil on both valves, and they both hold the fluids. So also sprayed the piston ring down on the cylinder. And then here's the cylinder head. You can see it a little better too. Focus on camera. See where that screw was running around up on top of that valve. And you probably don't necessarily need to get these that's quite this clean, but and you probably don't need to quite get these parts quite that clean, but I like to take pride in what I'm going to do. And if I'm going to do it, I don't just want it to run. I want it to run good and run for a long time. So go ahead and clean those up real good. Another thing, you want to get your valves lifted up one at a time. Take a flashlight. You probably can't see much on camera, but right under that valve there's a little lip that the edge of it rides on, and then kind of a beveled taper there. We'll make sure that's cleaned out real good. If you get a chunk of carbon down there on that taper, that will prevent that valve from sealing up. So, and you kind of do the same thing, roll it over, and then check the other side. When I'm cleaning those out, you don't want to use a wire brush under there. You really don't want to use any sandpaper. This is my tool of choice, my favorite hook tool. Gets up under there real good, and scrape that out, wipe it out, blow it out. Good to go. Okay, I think the next step will also, we're going to reuse the head gasket here. It was in pretty good shape. You can usually tell when you see a blown out head gasket, and this one didn't have any signs of compression. Usually you'll see like a crack, and it'll be blackened where the carbon and oil has been leaking and blowing out. So we're going to go ahead and get this one all cleaned up, and we're going to be reusing that. Now I'll get this put back together, and then we'll check, see what the compression's like, and check for fire. Alright, got all those bolts back in. So now that all the covers are back on, the head's torqued down. Before we put the plug in, next thing I want to do is get the flywheel hook here cleaned up, get the coil all cleaned up, get that back on, and we'll check for fire. And then if we got fire, we'll go for the carburetor. So saved you guys a little rust flying around through the air, and went ahead and got that coil all cleaned up, got the flywheel cleaned up good enough. And the main thing you want to clean when you're cleaning these coils up is the contact surface where the coil mounts to the engine. That's the most critical, and then that should get her firing if you got a good coil. So the next thing we're going to do, get spark plug out. I don't have a new spark plug right now at the time, but we're going to brush that old one there off and we'll see what it'll do. Yeah, let me see if I can get you guys set up here on the stand. How's that there? You guys see what's going on? Yeah, so we can get this set up here where you guys can see. Let's see how much work we're going to have to put into this thing. You guys see that there? Okay. I got the recoil pulled off right now, so we're just going to crank her over with the drill. Make life a little easier. Make sure that kill wire to the ignition's out, not touching anything. It just, the ignition switch grounds that. Alright, let's see what we got here. Alright, got my drill all set up and got my plug set up. Another thing, when you're putting this coil on, the only thing you're doing to spec here is you want to set the points gap. When you loosen these two screws, you get about a 1/4 inch of adjustment up and down. I usually set mine just an initial setting, something like this, just to see if we got fire or not. Just a little piece of cardboard. This is a little corner off of a package or a matchbook, something equivalent to that. And you want to be able to just slide under, have a little bit of drag there. If you can do that, you should have fire and good enough to get it fired up, and then you can fine tune it from there. Alright, what do you say we give her a crank and see if we got any kind of action? Alright. You guys see that on camera there? Looks like we got real good fire. Pretty pleased with that. Bring you guys in for a little close up here so we can get you a little better shot of the fire here. Really has exceptional fire, really good. Definitely enough to fire this bad boy up. Kind of weird how it's inconsistent on camera, but in real life it's real nice, consistent hot fire. So that should be plenty. Alright, let me back you back up here. Good deal. Alright, well, the next thing we'd like to do is, wouldn't mind hearing this thing bark a little bit and see what its fate is. Now we know we got ignition, so fortunately I'm out of starting fluid and my gas cans are empty, but I did find a can of good old carbon choke cleaner, so we're going to use a little bit of that. It won't run, and luckily, because we're inside today, but it'll be enough to get it to bark and let us know. There she is, not quite wanting to take off. Almost got a couple pops there. Give her another shot. It's been a few years since she's had anything. So what do you guys think? You're going to take a second look at that old scrap generator sitting out on the side of the curb next time you drive by? There she goes. Oh, we got a few little pops out over there. I think we need to get it outside and get some gasoline going through it, but I think that's a pretty good prognosis for this thing here. We figured out, we answered the question, did it grenade inside, or exactly what did happen? And, well, do a little recap here and go over it and set the cover back on just for aesthetic purposes. And this is a free Coleman Briggs Generator with the 8-horse Briggs. I did look it up. It's a 1990 engine. Say it probably has not really got too awful many hours on it. Original paint, and it's all in pretty good shape. Peeling a little bit, but so the next thing we're going to be doing here, we'll go through the carburetor and the generator head, and we'll do those about the same time probably. We got several projects on the shelf right now that we need to get knocked out, so we'll probably set this aside now we know it's a good running motor. Just needs the carb gone through. And get a few other things knocked out, and then we'll bring this back out down the road and get the rest of it gone through. And kind of not really an antique, but it's a good functional item, so we'll restore it and have it ready to fire up and use. Anyway, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and hopefully maybe this helps some of you guys out. And if you got any questions or need more details on anything, I had to kind of briefly go over everything, but definitely answer any questions, help anybody out I can. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you.